Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Begin by approving the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. 6-0. Next up, approval of minutes. We'll start with the regular session conference room here, 6 p.m. November 16th. Any questions or corrections to the regular session minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Executive session, same room, same date, 7:12 p.m. Questions or corrections to those? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Authorization for payment of bills.
The one thing I'll share on there, if you look at the revenues and how they're skewed this year compared to last year, a couple things to keep in mind. Last year at this time we already received some CARES money, so that kind of inflated our revenues. And our taxes, you never know when your taxes are getting paid and when they're coming in. Last year at this time we already had quite a bit of our taxes in. We just got our taxes last or Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, so last Thursday, and it's pretty big. So January, you're going to see our revenues are going to probably be above of where we were January last year. So expenditures, keep in mind we did all the work on the baseball field. So we've done a lot of cosmetic things to our fields, the scoreboards. So our expenditures are naturally a little high this time compared to last year, and that's in the financial report.
Any other questions or corrections on the bills? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Citizens Communications. We received a letter from Terry Young, who is in concrete construction in Pleasant Hill, Missouri. And he sent us a letter dated December 10th. Dear Superintendent Indy Turgeon, I just finished reading the article by Heather Berry in the December edition of the Rural Missouri magazine and was so impressed with its content that I wanted to write you a letter of thanks to you and all the parties involved with the School Bus Cafe project. That is one of the most creative teaching ideas I've ever seen. I have to applaud Brandy Wright and Rich Green for taking on this project. I am so encouraged by their commitment to such a project. The lessons learned by the hands-on experience will be invaluable to these students forever. To the school board, superintendent, instruction staff, and all other people involved with this project, I say thank you. What a great way to learn and have fun too. Please share my thanks with your teachers and students. I hope to visit the School Bus Cafe one day. Sincerely, Terry L. Young. Next up is administrators' reports.
So we've been busy. December's a little crazy. Today we had, I like to call it our movie and popcorn day. It kind of gives the teachers a day to, kind of get that grading done so that they don't have to take it home over break, so that they can enjoy that, and kind of wrap up some of those loose ends because tomorrow's an early out for us. So today we had a K2 movie day in the morning, and we also had gym time to play, and then we made ornaments, kind of some DIY out of plastic cups. They loved that. They weren't really sure what was going to happen with that, but we melted them in the oven, and they sat there and watched it, and just their faces were, oh, this is so cool. 15 seconds under the broiler, and you have the coolest Christmas ornament. So they loved that. Then we repeated it in the afternoon for 3rd through 5th grade as well, and did kind of the same thing. During that time, teachers did have some meetings with the title teachers to talk about our reading data from the first semester, with our benchmarking and our progress monitoring that we've been doing. Also this week, Monday, we had our 2nd grade hot chocolate stand. And so if you remember, a couple years ago, we did the whole district. That was a lot, and so they kind of scaled back this time, and it was just for the elementary, so pre-K through 5th grade. And the 2nd grade classes took turns with that, so Miss Casons would do one shift, and then Miss Straggs would do another. They ended up raising $205 off of that, and so that money that they raised, they are donating to the clothes closet. Because the clothes closet gives us so much throughout the year, and so all of that money is going to turn around and go back to the clothes closet. So when we come back from break, we'll do a little presentation of the money to the clothes closet. When we come back, we'll also start our mid-year benchmarking for our Dibbles reading assessment, just to kind of really gauge where those kids are, you know, as far as our understanding of reading and how our teaching of reading is going, and then we will regroup for our progress monitoring groups. So we are ready for break, though. They are very excited for parties tomorrow, but I know everybody is ready for a break.
In the middle school and high school, the high school, so this year we started meeting with student council once a month, myself and Mr. Goodhouse and their advisor, Ms. Llewellyn, trying to look for ways they can increase their ability to lead within the school district. And so it started out in September. In October, we were kind of brainstorming things we wanted to do. So they sent out a survey to the students, asking things they thought they needed or things that we could do to improve the school. And one of the things they got from that QR code, if you've seen it around the school, is that a snowball or more dances of it, semi-formal dance was something that they'd be interested in. So starting in October, they sent out a survey, a needs assessment survey, to see if that's something that, in fact, the students would want as a whole, and then what that would look like if they were to have a dance. So they went through in October just to see if they wanted it. In November, they went out and got more details, what type of dress, if we do it after a basketball game, what we would serve, how we would decorate, if we'd have pictures, or if we'd bring a photographer. So they really did all the details of it, and we were able to have that dance. I believe it was on the 10th. And it was a great event. It was the first time we've done it in a long time, they've said, and it was a success, and it's probably one of the most attended dances we've had outside of prom in recent years. So it's good to see a lot more people on campus, having fun and getting kind of back to normal. But it was a great event, and the most important part and most important piece of that is the leadership it came from. It was all student driven, with obviously the help of Miss Llewellyn. So that was great to see that addition of that event this year. And you might have known a little bit about that because Eagle Nation News was kicked off 2 weeks ago, and it was great to see that on YouTube. They pushed it out, that first episode. They have sports. They cover some stuff in the elementary, usually in the middle school and the high school, and just different pieces. They did stuff with the hot chocolate 2 weeks ago. I don't know, it's great to see our students out there creating, and we're able to really highlight all the great things that are going on in the school. And again, it's not teachers, it's not administrators, it's all student driven. Under the direction of Mrs. Green, obviously, but having that there is another piece. I think is having a voice in leadership with student council, having that voice with that YouTube channel has been another great thing for our school district. And then in the middle school, Mrs. Hamlin has done a lot with service the last 2 months. I don't think we were able to talk about it last time, but she did a canned food drive that was very successful in partnership with the high school student council, as well as doing hats and the mittens drive that were donated recently, and the students that were able to achieve their goal were earned a party. So a lot of good stuff with voice, a lot of good stuff with leadership, as well as service to our community. So all in all, it's been a great last month. So
just a couple of things. We have completed the Map Eoc BLM testing for the fall semester, so that's done, which is a relief. There'll be another testing window that will open in February for the second round of that. And then we did not have any curriculum meetings in December. It's just a little busy, and so we'll start those back up in January. Normally second semester is when teachers really start thinking, oh, I have to have this done by May. So we'll get those meetings going again in January and have math and ELA curriculum written by May. Some teachers are already done, and they are very happy about that. So, and then also when we come back, we will be working on and finalizing our Grow Your Own and teacher recruitment grants that we want to submit to DESE. So just need to sit down with the administrators and finalize what we want to do, put into those grants for that funding. So that's all I have.
All right, I'll start off. everybody got an edition of the Rural Missourian, great article in there. And that's kind of what that citizens communication reference. If you haven't seen it, the World Resource Institute, one of their biggest things, they've received a lot of grant money this year under this push for electric vehicles. And they're trying to support school districts around the country, get them information on, why going electric school buses makes sense. They don't have funding they can just give to school to go towards it, but they're supposed to help do a lot of the research. Well, they reached out to me when they came across my website that keeps data on the comparison of an electric versus the diesel, and asked if I could partner with them and share the data, and I said, well, it's out there, it's public for anybody. Well, in the course of them surfing our website, they came up with all this information, put this great article together that's on their webpage. So if you haven't seen it, there's a link on Facebook that our school posted. It's just a great article, talks about everybody from the board's forward thinking to everybody that was involved and letting the students do their part. And so it's nice. The kids get so excited, like when this came out, and every kid that I was giving them the looks on their face like, I'm famous, it's like, why is my picture not in there? Well, listen, we sent them 200 pictures, and they couldn't put them all in there, so
bigger picture, small picture.
yeah. So the kids have been phenomenal. So going from that, the question is, okay, what's next? Because we got the bus cafe, what's next? So I have an idea, and I pitched it to Mr. Green. I said, we have a problem. And DESE's real big on this. When we go to MSIP 6, they want schools to create experiential learning situations, like our bus. They're using our bus as a model. This is what we're looking for. So they want you to start with the problem and have the students solve a real world problem. So I approached Mr. Green's class and I said, I have a problem. And I said, my problem is my bus drivers won't wash their buses. And they're all looking at me like, what? And I said, and it just drove me nuts until I washed one myself and realized I ruined a shirt, ruined some slacks, because when you wash the bus in there, you get it all over you. There's just no good place to stand, so small. So I told the kids, I want to convert that to an electric washer. So they've divided up into 4 teams, have been doing this research, and then gave presentations to Joe and I today and just floored us. Just absolutely floored us with their ideas and how their ideas were going to work. And then you go into something like this, kind of like the tree planting in the playground. You go into this, you don't want to disappoint anybody because, so what did I do? I bought a tree from every presentation. Well, in this particular case, every single team had a unique idea that Joe and I just fell in love with. And it's like, I like that idea, and I like this idea. So before it was over with, now they're all going to combine and put their ideas together. And the whole idea is, okay, happy bus drivers. Joe's like, my bus parts are going to last longer because they're not going to be always breaking down because they have all that mud caked underneath them. And so we'll be able to wash them twice a week. So that's the next. And Mr. Green today, he says, you've got those students so fired up. And he says, I was wondering what would be the next thing to outdo the bus. And he says, I think this is it. And I said, the question is, what's it going to be next year? So
did he commit to 12 months then?
Huh?
He committed to 12 months and it'll be done? So next year.
They haven't gotten there, so we'll see. So it's just, this is the atmosphere we've created. It's just, from, the hot cocoa, which was really good in the elementary. Next month they're starting ukuleles. I'm so stoked about that. As a matter of fact, I brought them all in here, and I had 4 students come in here and just volunteer today to tune the ukuleles. It was just phenomenal. And then they were all like, how come we don't get to do this? So, it's just, I don't know, it's just, there's so many exciting things going on, and kids getting excited about different things, and they're doing great things, and we're gonna have some really successful students when they walk out these doors their senior year. That's all I have.
Anything from Keith?
No, he didn't have anything.
Okay, that wraps up administrators' reports. We'll move to the food service report.
We started doing, I laugh about this because when we first talked about doing these after-school meals, with what's it called? CHCFP. We talked about it. We talked to some other schools. I asked my wife, because they do it over there, I said, about how many meals? She says 40 to 50. And I told Kish, I said, what are you going to do if we get close to 100 meals? She says, we'll fix 100 meals. Well, what are we up to, like 160?
Something like that. It's a good majority of the elementary.
And she was like, why did we agree? I said, we did.
And it's more than a snack.
But
it's
a meal.
Full
Yeah, it's a full meal. It's reimbursable. We get reimbursed for the full thing. So it's a great program, you know. I think even high school kids have been taking them. So so that's been the most positive thing. And I think it's gonna go a long ways.
On Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah, we just started with 2 days, mainly tutoring on those days, but eventually we hope to, if the basketball team's leaving and they have to leave early and won't be back till late, you know, send them a meal with them, and so.
No items under unfinished business. We'll move to new business. Begin with the electric bus bid.
All right. So first, I will go through and tell you the bids and how they came in at. Last year, if you recall, we only had 2 bus companies submit bids, but this year we were excited. All 4 bus companies submitted bids. So the 4 companies were Thomas Built Buses, Midwest International, Bluebird, and then Line Electric. So, on the electric bus, Line Electric came in at $338,263. That's, if I'm remembering right, I think about $100 more than what it was last year. But this includes the dual charging station. So, so basically it's actually cheaper than last year. We also asked for full AC on the bus to kind of see what the cost of that would be. Granted, we know we wouldn't use it very often, but like the biggest thing, and you know, Melissa, plug your ears, but we got a football coach after me all the time. When we take our summer football camp trips, that bus is so hot. Let's get air conditioning on it. So we're going to do that with the trip bus, but we're like, well, let's see how much it would be on a electric bus. So the second price I give you, so like on Thomas Built, it was we're on Line Electric. Adding the AC was $15,000. On Thomas Built, the electric bus was $339,728. The AC option was $16,000. The Central States came in at $361,905. The AC was $10,750. And then Midwest International Bus came in at $402,130. And the AC was $27,695. So Joe and I talked about it. One of the concerns we have with the AC is how much does it take off of your range, you know, running the compressor. So we're going to recommend that we purchase an electric bus, but not the AC as the option. So we would like to recommend purchasing 2 Line Electric buses at $338,263. So 2 buses would be a total of $676,526. Now keep in mind with USDA, REC, and VW, those two buses will cost us a total of $99,000. And the charger. So about basically $49,000 a bus. So I'd like to recommend, and I think we talked about it today. Went back and forth. We've had some trouble with our diesel heater on our electric bus. We've been working with Line Electric. They've been great. Joe's actually found a solution that works, and we've been using it, and it's been running, and it's been fine. So we would like to explore one of these electric buses do all electric heat. Now, we understand that it will take off some of the range, but from the school districts that I called that have the electric heat, they said that it's probably going to knock off about 30% of your range. 30% of the range would still allow us to do our morning and afternoon route without having to plug it in during the day. But in worst case scenario, you can plug it in between the two trips. And it'd be something else that either our students or we could look at, diesel heat versus electric heat, which one works better, which one do we like better. We're paying $40-some thousand for the bus, why not try it out and see what it looks like. So I'd like to recommend that we purchase 2 Line Electric buses, one with electric heat and one with diesel heat.
I got one quick question.
Yes.
On the heater. These things are made in Canada. What kind of feedback are we getting on the heating side from the Canadians? Because I believe it's colder. They probably see it up there too.
It is. And I don't know if you want to speak for, in my research is the company that they used to have a different, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they used to go with a different heater, and they went to this new company with this latest generation that we have, and they're having issues with them too. So they're on top of it, and they're saying that this next line of buses that you get are gonna have a different result. Yeah, and they have a fix for the one we have. Joe's found a temporary fix, but I think they'll send us the parts, and we'll have to. Right now, the pump that's on there is sucking the fluid through instead of pushing it and collapsing it. So that's kind of the problem we're running into right now, and their suggestion is another pump, and they found a solution for it. They sent a guy over here by the name of Len. He's been looking at our bus, and he's got the schematics. So that's the one thing. Yeah, we've had issues, but every time we've had an issue, they're on the phone with us. They're plugging into our system, looking at the faults. So I can't complain there.
No,
so,
I was curious.
But yeah, I'm like you. That's the first thing I did. We're having problems with our heat. Well, let me call these guys. And,
right.
You know, I have to speak French a little bit. From what I gather, they're.
One of the differences you'll see on electric versus diesel with our vehicle. So the school bus out there is plugged in right now.
Mm-hmm.
If it is an electric heater, that bus can be programmed to come on 40 minutes prior to the driver arriving, and it's pulling electric from the charger, not the battery. So it's going to preheat from the charger. So when he or she unplugs that school bus, you're still at 100% charge because it's preheated from the charger.
Yeah, that's a good benefit. Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing is you're not fighting to get it warmed up to that point,
Right.
or
And
so.
that's probably something you guys will want to utilize.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the school I talked to that is saying 30%, losing 30% of their range, they have a Bluebird. So I don't know if it has the same feature of plugging it in and warming up the bus before you leave.
I don't like to talk bad about other people, and it's not, but the Bluebird bus is not getting the range. I've talked to maintenance directors where it's 120-mile range, they turn on the heater, they get 80 miles. So it's performance. But Andy is correct, you will lose range based upon you're heating that bus with those battery packs. So you will reduce your range. So that comes to the point of buying the right amount of range ahead of time so that you're able to complete the trip. And Andy's done that. So I'm confident if you guys go electric heat and try that and plug it in and utilize the warm-up, I think you'll. Now keep in mind, electric heat feels different than a diesel heater. If you have electric heat in your home versus, I mean, I grew up on oil and it was dirty, but it was warm. Electric heat just isn't like that. So it's a different type of heat.
Say it comes a point in time where different kind of heat's better than no heat.
January,
Yeah,
February,
exactly.
yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Not, I entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
So
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Now the diesel bus bid.
All right, so on the diesel bus, we had three, Lion only makes electric buses, so we had the other three companies submit bids. We had three options on there. One was an additional heater, one option was full air conditioning to keep our coaches happy, and the other option on there was a charging ports in the seats, because our trip buses, our students, actually do plug in their devices and use their iPads with the Wi-Fi and everything. So on this particular bus, that was one of the things we're really, this one especially, if we take a trip somewhere in the summertime and it's hot, it would be nice to have full air. So we had three quotes. Joe doesn't think we need the additional heater, but we would like full air, and we do want the charging port. So I will give you the amount of the buses with those options. So Thomas built buses came in at $110,512. Midwest International came in at $112,210. Central States Bus Sales, Bluebird came in at $113,417. If you want to know, the full air on the Thomas built was $4,565. Earlier we were talking $15,000, $16,000. On International, it was $7,965, and on Central State Bus Sales, it was $9,250. Most of the buses we have are Thomas built. Not to say that we always have to go with Thomas built, but Joe has found a rhythm in working on those, and they came in at the lowest bid with those options, and I'd like to recommend a Thomas built bus for our trip bus at $110,512.
That's just with the AC and the charging port, not the heater, right?
Not the heater. The heater was $511, but Joe really didn't want to put that in there. He thinks there'll be more issues than not. And it's got a heater on there, but this is like an extra heater in the dash area.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, gentlemen. You're welcome to stay and enjoy the meeting, or I know you guys have trips, so.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Okay, next up is the district audit report.
All right, so I sent these to you guys, hoping that you guys would read through it over the weekend. But I did guide you to the last two pages, which signify the findings. So I'm not going to go through it all. We've checked through the numbers, make sure they match what we had. The findings are the same as usual. Segregation of duties when it comes to bookkeeping. They would like to see more than just one person, from paying the bills and receiving the revenues. And so that's something that, as long as I've been superintendent here, that's been marked on there. So, and like they said in here, it's small schools our size, it's hard to have that many staff members. so. Any questions on the audit?
If we don't put in a second person, does that increase our liability if something would happen?
So when I asked, the answer was, well, we need to find something, so you might as well have it. I don't know that it increases the liabilities, because honestly, we kind of do have some segregation of duties, like, the principals approve the bills, then I approve the bills.
So you do have checks and balances.
Yeah, and then Lacey, and then it goes through Lacey, and Lacey prints off the checks, and then they get mailed off. The revenues come in, Marcia puts those in, then, so I mean, it used to be Marcia did all of it. So at least now, there's a lot more separation, duties are a little bit different. I would love to have another bookkeeper, but I took some things off. The one's plate, she was afraid I was pushing her out the door, so I was trying to help out.
People
So
who do things like this have a tendency to have issues with other people, what they're, they do it a certain
Yeah.
way, and,
And I understand that, you're responsible for a lot of things, and you're like, I don't want somebody coming in here messing it up, so I understand that. She's great at what she does, but good question.
Entertain a motion to approve the audit report for 2019-2020.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next up, spring 2021 Map Eoc results.
You need me to turn the TV on? Sorry, I didn't think about it.
You guys able to email those out to the board,
What's that?
the results we're getting ready to go over?
Yeah, he could.
That'd be great. I sometimes have people ask me questions on them, and I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
don't remember from the 5 minutes I looked at it on the screen, sorry.
Well, and, I was gonna say this year's a weird year because last year we didn't test in the spring when we shut down. Well, this year we tested, so I'm on MSIP 6 committee for DESI.
Okay.
And that's been a conversation we had the other day. We have not had any kind of consistency over this whole MSIP 6 cycle, from the inappropriate LA1 and Algebra 1 tests they had to throw out, so they couldn't count the scores that day, to changing the standards and wrong test formats, they had to throw that test out. So it's just like there's not been any consistency, but there's some exciting things coming around about MSIP 6. All right.
So what I did here is I put the last 3 years of test scores that we've had. 2020 we did not test, obviously weren't in session for that time. And the measure, I'll zoom in here. The measure that we used for this was the advanced and proficient. So what they'll do is they'll put those two categories together and base that upon how you're doing as a school district. So they'll add proficient and advanced, your percent of students at those two levels, and compare it to the state level. So what I did here was basically just go over the last 3 years that we tested and did that for every subject area that we were tested in. So this is 2018, and as you can see, we have a lot of red. So what I've done, the first column is the Knox County. Here, I'll zoom in here. The first one is that Knox County score that we had. The second score is the state average, and that third category, that third column right there would be the difference of if we're above or below that state average. So if you look at this, red being that every single score that we had that year in 2018 was below the state average. When we're looking at proficient and advanced added together, the percent of our students against what the state of Missouri did as a whole. And then this, and we don't need to drill down too much into this right now because this is 18 old data, but just kind of trying to build a trend that you'll see as we go forward. So here's math. Same idea, we have one green, so that is, we had one grade level that was above the state average in 2018 in math, and that would have been third grade. Then moving over to science, as Mr. Turgeon referenced, we have a lot of changes throughout the standards. This is the year in science that we didn't test because they're going over new standards. They're still building the test and doing piloting at that point, so there's no state standards or no state testing that year for science. So as you can see, just kind of, we're taking a broad view right here. Lots of red, not very much green. So we'll go to the second year, 2019, that we had to the following year. You see some growth here. So we'll go into the ELA, that first box right here, and you can see that there is one green. So it went from no green to one green. So some progress there. If you look at the numbers back side by side from year over year, we made progress towards that being closer to the state average for proficient and advanced. So there are some gains that we've definitely made there. If you look at math, you see a lot of gains there. So we went, if you look from last year, 2018, to this 2019 score, went from one green, and a little over half of our grade levels there were all above the state average when you look at proficient and advanced, the percent of our students at those two levels. If you don't know, there's 4 categories at the state level. There's below basic being the lowest of the categories, basic, proficient, and then advanced. The top two being proficient and advanced. Missouri's Department of Education expectations that I think they say is that 100% of your students will be at advanced and proficient, or something like that. Obviously,
No child left behind.
Right.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously not expect something that will meet, but that's why that number is there. But anyway, this is 2019. You can look at those numbers and see the numbers don't really matter as much as you see green. You see a lot more green than you did red the year before. Again, that trending is an upward trajectory there still. And then you look at science, standards got back put in rotation because they were able to pilot the test. We have a test that year, and again we have 2 there green, 1 red, and that would be that 2019. We didn't test in 2020. Pandemic year, didn't test. We were shut down during that time. We did get our fall EOC, so those kids that did take it, we're lucky enough to just take a test that not very many students in the state of Missouri did take. So it was good for them. They got a little extra practice. The students, so how it worked during 2020, the students that were in classes that were tested, requirements for graduation, so that's going to be biology, algebra 1, English 2, and government. You have to take 4 EOCs in high school. If they're in those classes during that time, they didn't have to take them again. They were good to go. So as long as they enrolled in those classes, their requirement was filled and they didn't have to take it. So that's 2020. 2021, back to normal. And you look at this again, that trajectory, we're starting to climb again. Just looking at the colors, more green good, less red, obviously good as well. So we can go at ELA. Remember that first year, none. Then we had we had 1, and now if you look at that throughout that, well, we have 5 green and 2 red. So again, that's a major growth from 18 to 19, 19 to 21 over the course of those 4 years. A lot of growth, especially when you compare to the state of Missouri. We look at math, again, pretty similar to last time, but still a lot of green. Definitely a lot better than 2018, but a lot of successes there. And we look at, most of them are less than 10% away. So again, we're pretty close to being average if we're not there. So again, average isn't the expectation, but whenever we start out with basically everybody underneath the state average or making that growth towards that average or being above the state average with proficient and advanced, definitely the trajectory that we want to be on. Makes us feel like the decisions we're making academically with curriculum, with with teacher training and all those other areas that we really focused in on the last several years has been successful.
So Alex,
yes.
with the grades that are in red, what do y'all do to address that as far as helping to, I don't know, reverse that or get them toward the green?
Right.
I'm just curious.
So some things we've done, and you guys can all chime in whenever, but things that we've done before, just looking at all the data that we have, this is just one data point. It's no more important than any other data point that we have. So we have local assessments that we do, so what the teachers do in their classroom with formative assessments as well as summative assessments, those short-term tests, those long-term tests. What they're going to gain from that is going to be way better than what we're going to get from the state of Missouri. So how this factors in, we take this test in April and May. There's years we get it back in January the following year. So how useful is that information for us to actually guide us in our decision making and what we're going to do with our students at Knox County R-1? But what we do have is we have great teachers who provide assessments that are gonna be based upon great curriculum that Mrs. Goodwin is helping them formalize, and then also within the assessments that they're using that are aligned to the Missouri Learning Standards. So when that all ties together, that's when you're gonna have success. We also have iReady. I know we bring that up and you're like, oh, iReady, that again. But iReady is a tool that is very important for us because it is that it's similar to this in that it's a diagnostic tool and it's only as good as the data that you're gonna get, but that data that you receive is instantaneous. So they finish it, they click submit, we can look at the results and see what it is. And it drills down to every single skill that they need to know at Missouri, as measured by the Missouri Learning Standards. So whatever that is, we're able to take that, do small groups, do interventions, really work on whatever that kid needs individualized and really push them. And it's been wonderful in having that ability to look at that data.
And another thing to add to that is, for a while, DESE had gotten away to providing us kind of the drilled down data to
Right.
show what areas students were struggling in, and we're getting those reports again, and we're supposed to be getting more of those and better reports. So I look at that from a curriculum director standpoint and try and see, what are we missing? Are there things that we're consistently low in? And then going back and looking at our curriculum and going, are we hitting this? And if we are we hitting it to the depth of knowledge they're being assessed on the assessment? And if not, that's why I always tell teachers, your curriculum is a working document. We think we've got everything in there, and we do, but do we have enough for the students that they're achieving that? And if not, let's see how we can take that up a notch and make that better, and then help guide our small groups and our RTIs as well from that data and improving our curriculum that way.
And we look at that too, like, third grade is the first time that they ever take the map test. So really, we're looking at K1, 2, did we miss something? Where are the holes? And then, we see this and we look at that data, we sit down and we have meetings and we say, okay, we're missing time. Where are we teaching time? And then we go back and make sure that we're consistent in that, because we know from the past that if we miss it in first grade or barely touch it in first grade and then don't see it again until third grade, they've had a year and a half where they haven't had any exposure to that, and then they take a test over something that they should know that they haven't had exposure to. And so it really, like Nancy and Alex both said, it makes us go back and reflect over what we have, and then we go back and say, okay, where do we need to boost that? And it helps to guide our small group and so that we can address those.
I'll add to that just a couple things. If we go back to 2018, that was our early years of using iReady. Up until then, we really didn't have a great tool to gauge where our students were at with the state standards at any given point in time. Last year, we got the new reading series, so that's something we felt we needed to improve on. The teachers did some research, found something they really like. So now, we're implementing that. It's going to take some time. The other thing, we are aware we need to look at our math and do some improvements in that area, and that's something I know that we're going to be focused on. Let's talk MSIP 6. Let's first talk MSIP 4. I'm not going to go back as far back, Debbie, as MSIP 1, but we'll start with MSIP 4 because I was part of MSIP 4, MSIP 5, MSIP 6. MSIP 4, part of a school's evaluation was not only assessments, but was coming to the school and evaluating the school, looking at the school's curriculum, looking at the school's programs, their offerings, and how do they do things. So it's kind of a holistic approach under the understanding that the end of the year assessment, how accurate of a picture is it? Are the students putting all their effort into it because the test means nothing to them? How many people do well with the final exam at the end of the year without a study guide? How would we do? So that was kind of the purpose. But when we moved to MSIP 5, the whole program was designed, focused all on student achievement, attendance, graduation rate, and career ed placement. So it was all on student performance, with the majority of your points coming from student assessment. So everything was gauged on the end of the year assessment. So that's when iReady came in. It was like, we need to know before the end of the year if we need to improve this. So being a part of the Missouri Assessment Partnership, our push, we were trying to convince DESE that we needed a through the year assessment, not just a one snapshot at the end of the year. You know, our teachers, how nice would it be for our teachers to know, hey, your kid's behind here, you know, and know exactly what they need to plan for. iReady kind of helps us do that. But MSIP 6, DESE has been listening, and they're talking about doing some kind of new assessment where it's not an end of the year, let's catch it all at the end of the year. Can we do some kind of through the year assessment? And they're also looking at separating it. And you know, all of this stuff that we're putting together has got to go to the state board for approval, which I think it'll get approved. But now they're looking at 70% being that achievement and 30% being what the school does, with a lot of it hinging on whether it's a strategic plan or CSIP plan, a good portion of it hinging on your climate of your school should reflect how your school performs. How innovative is your school is going to be a component in this, and we're trying to come up with what are the metrics to score this. So it kind of shows you that DESE's, you know, okay, we need to do something different because this is a problem. I mean, any school, when you say the state averages, 30-some% are scoring proficient or advanced. Now, you also need to understand that you have below basic, proficient, and advanced. A lot of your standards of what you would expect would be on grade level is in the basic level. But we're constantly focusing on proficient or advanced. So there's a lot of things there. So when we look at this, we can't only put all our eggs in this basket. We have to look at every approach. You know, to me, for years, it's like, okay, our scores might be low in 3rd grade, 4th grade, first year of testing. But the thing that's always impressed me is by the time we get them to high school, we're always usually outperforming the state average. And I'm like, so somehow, you know, it starts here and it's rough, but then, and you know, you can go back and look at the turnover. You know, when you get a new teacher, it takes some time. So, and we're starting to see some of that take care of itself. So I think new curriculum, you know, more support, more training, and a new system, I think, is going to make a huge difference.
So right now, it sounds like probably the most immediate impactful metric that we use to look at would be the iReady metric. Is that correct? I mean, I was wondering which one do you feel like you look at, and this is telling me the most. Like, this is the one I trust the most. Is it the iReady right now, you think? I mean,
I look at 2 data points usually. One is iReady. If we're talking about teaching and learning, like what's going on in the classroom, what our kids are achieving at, that's the first one we look at, just because it is timely, it is exactly what's going on, and we know what they are, and aligned for the standards. The other point I look at is grade data, because graduation is tied to grade data. So between those two things, a lot of times I can then make some interpretations of what the student's going to need, whether it's will or like as a want to, and they're lacking effort, or if it's going to be something academically that we're going to have to provide more intentional interventions to try to help them and support them in the ways they need.
In the elementary, we use iReady, and then we use DIBBLS. So like DIBBLS is our reading benchmark that we do at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. And then we also use, for progress monitoring, RTI is just called response to intervention. And basically what that is we have those kids who are like our yellow and red kids, so our ones who need the most support. And so then we do groupings based off of that and drill the skills that they need so that we can try to get them on grade level by giving them that intensive support. This is our first year of doing RTI, so you know we're kind of working it out as we go. But we use DIBBLS to help guide that, and then we use burst data that goes along with it to give us we do 10 days of intervention, we progress monitor, 10 days of intervention, progress monitor. So we do a lot of data tracking right now in the elementary.
that's good. I mean, that's more, there's more value in that than one stop into the year. I mean, you get to that point, and what do you do? You know, like you get the situations where, okay, how do we correct this next? Do we go to the 3rd grade class that had issues? Oh, look, if we have a new teacher, or it's a whole new group of kids, or, you know, so I like the fact that we can track it real time to make sure that we're making those progressive steps real time. That's good.
Yeah, and those are all things which iReady is probably the one that's been around the longest, but these are not things, for those of you newer to the board, these are not things we've been doing, you know, we weren't doing this 10 years ago.
Right.
So these are things that we've implemented in the last probably 5 years, maybe a little bit more, to dig down into that data. Because without that, my experience as a teacher was, it was tough. You got 30 kids, and they all take one test. Well, if they all get a good grade on that test, that's great, we move on. But a good educator would look at, well, wait a second, a lot of kids missed a lot of questions on this content. So just the challenge of the teacher to individually and manually dig into that data. Whereas now we have tools like iReady, which I think is probably one of the greatest tools education's come up with maybe ever. Because it's that immediate feedback, and you can cater that curriculum to that kid and help them where they need it, not spend time in areas they don't. So.
And it's adaptive. So if a student struggles with a question, then it's gonna take them down this path to drill down and find out exactly what they're struggling with.
So
Or it'll go the other way, yes. Yeah.
There's now already those things.
There's two layers to that. One is the assessment piece. There's also a personal instruction piece that they use more in the elementary level than they do in middle school and high school, but that one is adaptive, and it's gonna give you skill and drill at your level, and it's game-based, and you can go in there and you can do some things, but that's another aspect to it that we utilize a lot more in elementary than in the secondary school, but it's a good tool.
Any other questions? If not, that was information, so we'll move on to the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction Plan 2021-2022 revision.
Okay, you know, sometimes, you know, you just go along with things and things just turn on a dime. And that's what happened a weekend ago, when the Attorney General sent out his letter. You guys are all aware of what happened. We were continuing with what we had approved as a plan, and pretty soon it got fired up here. And so we needed to revisit the plan anyways, and really we're told we should revisit it every month. We should have it on there just in case something needs to change. So you're going to see it on every board agenda. If there's no changes, I'll say there's no changes. So the biggest things, the changes in this plan, is we're not requiring masks. Masks are optional on buses and in the school. And then the second thing is we took out anything that said that we're quarantining students. Now, when the committee met and we discussed this, some of the biggest changes, aside from taking off the mask and the quarantine, the biggest discussion revolved around, well, do we contact trace? And, you know, a lot of schools threw it out, but our committee felt like parents would still like to know if their kids, some parents would like to know if their kids were close contact. So we're still gonna do that part of it. It'll probably be a little wider scale, not so specific, because we won't have to get as specific. But a sample letter, you know, Kathy Palmer's already drawn up a nice sample letter to send to the parents saying, hey, your student might have been a close contact, keep an eye on, you know, symptoms, and, you know, just kind of a courtesy thing. So I took out the test to stay in. Obviously, if we're not doing the quarantine, then there's not a test to stay in program. But we do have testing here at school for students and staff with our new nurse.
Even though we're not quarantining here, so if a student was quarantined outside of these walls, can we still utilize that program?
They can't be quarantined. Like the health department can't quarantine people. That was part of the same deal.
It actually started with the health department.
Oh, from the states.
Yeah.
From the Attorney General, yeah. So
So-
I'm sure it's in litigation right now.
So if someone's
As of now,
quarantining, they're doing it to themselves, and at that case, if they call the school and say, hey, I've quarantined my kid, but I'd like to send them back to school, would you test them?
Right.
And we won't test any students unless we have parent permission, and we told the staff you're not feeling good and you wanna get tested, just come down and Nurse Amy will.
So this is also gonna take off quite a bit of time, right, as far as our resources of using for the contract. I mean, we're gonna scale this thing back to where it's not so specific and it's not gonna be so time
Right.
consuming.
So probably what you're gonna see, you know, say a third grade student, we find out they test positive, send out that letter to third grade parents and the backpack, say, hey, just courtesy, your student might have been in close contact. You know, we're not gonna go in the classrooms and see who was sitting who for how long. You know, basically it's just saying, watch for symptoms. If they do get symptoms, just know they've been exposed, and so.
Is there a way we could add an electronic communication to that fairly easily? As a parent of an elementary school teacher, sometimes papers that get sent home in backpacks don't make it to my
Well,
house.
so we do both. Like, our secretaries have every single parent's email, but a lot of times we get better luck with the paper. Sometimes we get better luck with the email.
Yeah.
Some parents don't check their email, some parents don't check the backpacks. So I think it'd be simple enough to just send both. That way they see it one place or another. And then Misha took the same approach that, you know, it's school board's decision. But, you know, of course, if someone tests positive, then we can still exclude them from school and they can't be in school until they're symptom free, so.
Just like if they were to throw up or
Yeah.
have a fever.
So that's the major changes in there. And, on the back page, we just added some language because DESI needed some. This document also has to be compliant with DESI for us to get our ESSER 3 money if the legislators approve it by March. So those changes in the back, added in there that we will encourage self-monitoring, assessing for COVID symptoms, remain at home for 24 hours until you're symptom-free. Practice safe personal hygiene, all those things have been added in there, and then all the quarantine language was taken out. So that's the plan. I was gonna come to you guys with 3 options. One was continue doing what we were gonna do before, what we did before. And when we did that one day last week, probably wisely we suspended that. Second option was mandate masks. Third options was gonna be this right here. So, if you guys are okay with that, I think the phone rings a lot less with this. Not to say that that's the best way to go, but I've had several people say, you know what, you know, the flu, when it was first about, it was the same thing. We've been in this for 2 years. At some point, students have to get back to their normal learning environment. So that's the plan I have. If that's what you guys want to approve, we can approve it. If you guys want to go back to one of the other options, we can do that as well. The choice is yours because I'm not making this decision.
No, I agree. I mean, at some point in time, whether the federal government, which sides move on or not, I mean, my opinion is, you know, we're gonna decide at some point in time to move on or not. I mean, you're gonna keep the kids and people in masks for the rest, I mean, because it's not gonna stop. I mean, we've seen what's gonna happen, it's gonna continue to happen, it's not going away.
Right.
Yeah, and I would have been nice to have a little more heads up from the state,
Yeah.
but I think we're moving in the right direction. I think, let's get back to normal, let's get these kids back to normal. I think we don't think often enough about the effects of the kids' mental health as much as we do their physical health through this. I was hearing listening to a study the other day that talked about the number of kids under 18. There's been a huge spike in death by overdose opioids, huge spike in depression, a lot of things. And I think a lot of it has to do with not having a normal childhood, and some of it was unavoidable, but the quicker we can get them back to enjoying their school years, the better.
And not to mention parents. I mean, most people in this community, both mom and dad work. So if you have, we had kids quarantined for 3 different separate occasions, and fortunate enough that I can work from home at some point in time. Not everybody has that option, so I can imagine, it's still hectic, but I can imagine for a lot of parents, the stress of, well, what do I do? Not to mention the lack of, because daycares couldn't take them either, and the lack of people available to help with that, if you don't have immediate family that's able, but most people in this community rely on grandparents, okay? That's the population that you want to stay away from more so because of the harsher effects. So, yes, I'm looking forward to going this direction personally. That's my opinion.
So how is this going to, or will this impact the grant that we got for our second nurse?
Yep, so we're kind of pivoting into a different direction, more based upon educating our students about different things, elementary, focusing on hygiene and health, general health concepts. Vaping is obviously something that's of a concern, so that ties in kind of with what we're trying to accomplish here. So using Nurse Amy as a vehicle to try to promote what we want there, I think will be an added bonus. I mean, I know COVID and all that stuff, and hopefully testing, she doesn't stay too busy with that stuff, but the more we can get in our classroom and being a lot more proactive with our approach versus reactive, anytime we can do that, I think is a good plan. So that is the plan as of right now.
Well,
So we talked about adding another nurse for a long time.
we did, and it just came up that this grant was available, and DHSS doesn't have answers for us because this just got thrown in their face.
Yeah.
And they approve these grants for these schools. Now, a lot of things, like if she's going in and talking about hygiene, those are things that were in that grant that they wanted you to do.
Yep.
Testing students, we're still gonna test it, but it's not gonna be test to stay in. So there's gonna be portions of that grant that we'll still be able to retain. They may say, hey, we've already approved this money for you, but really don't know, and that's what I keep going back to. We talked about adding another nurse.
Right.
So I think we'll get some of that grant money. I don't know if we'll get all of it, but
I like the option that your kids can go down and get tested, give you peace of mind if they're gonna be around the grandparents or, wanna be a little mindful. So
we're going on
I like
Christmas
it. We're
break,
still
we're gonna
offering it.
travel. We need to
Yeah, so I
make
mean, that's
sure.
the option if people decide
Yeah.
that they wanna utilize it.
But it's also, a good tool to have. Luckily, this grant kind of made us move a little quicker on
Yeah.
something we've talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but even though, financially for us, I mean, even if they took all of it away,
Right.
we would be fine. I mean,
Right.
right? I mean, it's not gonna, we're in a
No,
position that's not.
We won't have to shutter the
We're not
windows.
gonna have to, start cutting food or anything like that, so that's good. I'm glad it escalated, or kind of moved that faster that way,
Yeah.
regardless.
Any other questions, comments? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the revisions to the safe return to in-person instruction plan. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
What?
I move that we adjourn the regular session to go in closed session for the purpose of considering the following. Students under section 610.021, subsection 6 and 14. Personnel under section 610.021, subsections 3 and 13.
Mrs. Devlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Hagerly,
Yes.
Mrs. Yu,
Yes.
Mrs. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Parrish,
Yes.
Mr. Reel,
Yes.
Mr. Shanklin,